franchise people in terms of having the planning committee fully examine issues that are important. Perhaps will only be important to 26,000 people. That is 2 wards. But they will be then still important. And I think, you know, we have had some criticism from this council of the 9 single member wards. I'm not going to repeat that, but I think if there is a concern about lack of voice, we need to actually alter our practices and procedures in terms of community submissions and in terms of planning matters, so that people's voices aren't lost in the new structure. We don't have control over designing the structure. That's been decided at another level, but we do have control to add in community voices. And, you know, we passed a motion tonight where 61% had opposed public housing in a certain place. We've listened to the community, we've listened to their concerns, but we've still made a decision based on our values and our knowledge as councillors. So I don't, you know, expect 100% decisions or 100% support. Part of a council is really working out how to work with the objectors so that we do things that are of the betterment of the whole community.
Thank you. Are there further speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. Look, I'm actually in 2 minds about whether to abstain or to support this, but I'll just make these points. Firstly, I'm disappointed that we voted down all the constructive amendments that I was trying to put forward, and I'm also disappointed that we weren't able to handle those in a way that would have enabled councillors to actually individually vote on the constructive points that I've put forward. So it's really unfortunate that was not allowed to take place. Look, councillors, what we're talking about here is not about us. We're talking about the community. We're talking about how we listen to the community in terms of how we engage the community in relation to council meetings and council decision-making processes. And we have to ensure that the community is not disenfranchised, but actually further encouraged to partake and at a critical time when councils are making decisions. I think that that what's been offered now is perhaps not complete. It's not thorough enough. We could have gone further to actually put ourselves out there as a council that really listens to the community, and we build that into our decision-making and processes and structure that we're at the point of where decisions are made. We haven't done that. And also I'll just make the point that yes, there haven't been many submissions, but I tell you what, there's a lot of disgruntled people out there about council processes. There's a lot of mistrust at the council, and I thought that this would have been a process of allowing the council to actually engage with the community on a much more fairer basis. And whilst maybe there haven't been many submissions, because the point that Councillor Surf made, the community maybe have not been educated enough about the significance of these policy documents in relation to what it means for them. And that's why they have not actually come forward and put submissions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any further speakers? Councillor McCarthy, you reserved your right. Would you care to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be really brief because the hour is late. I just would thank councillors for the robust and interesting debate, and just would make the point that in this term of council, at the start of the term of council, we did adopt a number of changes to both the way in which planning committee operates, the way in which council meetings operate in general. And I wanted to highlight some of those because they carry through in the governance, local law, and other things that we've adopted here this evening, or in fact are effectively moving forward with updates in some cases because of the new local governance law. And those things actually are about enabling community members to make submissions to items, which was not allowed in previous terms of council. So I think it's really important for councillors to keep in mind. I've heard some things that are fairly negative, and I'd be a bit concerned about giving the impression, which I certainly heard from some of those comments, that there's been some restriction to debate. In fact, I think it's actually quite the opposite. There's been a real effort that's gone to make sure that in the processes of both considering items that are before council, that there are opportunities for people to make submissions, which was never allowed under previous council processes. There's also been, I think, a much more robust and considered way of enabling community members to engage in issues well before a council meeting. And let's be frank, councillors, the meeting that we are having right now is not the starting of a conversation. It's actually often the final point in what is a very long process on some issues. And if councillors have not heard and haven't engaged with community members on particular issues and coming to this chamber or coming to these meetings without having done that engagement, then that's disappointing. But in fact, that engagement should happen well before the meeting. So I would ask councillors to keep in mind that yes, this is a democratic space, but to do real engagement actually happens well and truly prior to this meeting. And I'll just end it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. I'll now put that to the vote. So councillors, there were a couple of amendments and you can see those now highlighted in yellow to the officer recommendation. All those in favour and against? That motion is carried and that was unanimous. Thank you, councillors, for that robust and very informed debate. We'll now move on to item 7.8, but before we do, I might ask, yep.
So I move a motion to extend time by 30 minutes, please.
Thank you. That was just what I was seeking, and that's seconded by Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. So we'll move straight to item 7.8, which relates to the contract award for KP Hardiman Hockey Pitch. We've got Mr. Sam Hewitt here to answer any questions. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Councillor Messina.
I note that this is just the contract for KP Hardiman Reserve, but I wanted to discuss the hockey pitch itself and the removal, and to ensure that the removal of the turf will be reused and not just gone to landfill, please. Can I have some assurance about that, and will that be in the contract itself?
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Mr. Hewitt.
Through you, Mayor Rennie. My colleague, Ms. Kyprios, who's with us tonight as well, reminded me that the tenderer, the recommended tenderer, in fact, put forward such a proposal in its submission to us. It recommends that when it lifts the synthetic grass, that it's rolled and saved and then potentially donated to other community uses. So we're really keen to support that. We can manage it on site. We'll manage it through our communications team and hopefully be able to help out some other community users.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Lawrence, question? Councillor, yep.
Just a supplementary on the reuse. Would this material be able to be reused in pocket parks and other, softenings of some of the harsh environments we have?
Through you, Mayor Rennie. Some of it's in pretty poor condition, so we're actually replacing it because it's reached the end of its life. So what we'll do is we'll work with the contractor to find the best pieces, if you like, and use those. It's unlikely, Mayor Rennie, that we can use them in our own pocket parks. They may need a high level of quality. But if there are community groups who can use it, we'd be pleased to be able to facilitate that. Mayor Rennie, I didn't also answer Councillor Messina's question about whether it'll be included in the contract. Now, typically it wouldn't be. That we'll deal with these as an operational matter. We can easily accommodate that.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Councillor Messina.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Rennie, I have a supplementary question and I've just gone blank. Are we able to include that in our media messaging that, this synthetic turf could have gone to landfill, but Daravan Council is looking at reusing it as a resource, and this is what we've done with that. So I'd like to see that message to the community.
Through you, Mayor Rennie, I think it's an excellent idea. We'll make sure we do that.
Thank you. Councillor Greco.
Yeah, look, thank you, Mayor Rennie. I just wanted to ask a supplementary question in relation to the reuse. Will the surface be council's property, or will it be the contractor's property? why I asked that, because from a compliance, from an assurance that we achieve that objective of reuse.
Through you, Mayor Rennie, I think Councillor Greco is talking about the synthetic grass we remove rather than the new synthetic grass. So,
that was my understanding of the question. Yes.
So the synthetic grass that we're removing is a product that it's no longer fit for its purpose. Hopefully this answers your question, Councillor Greco. It will be donated to community groups. It will be diverted away from landfill. It's a good story. In the event that we don't donate it to community groups, it ends up in landfill. So it's a sensible reuse option for us. Does that answer your question, Councillor Greco?
Not really. The question was that I understand the reuse, but who is actually the owner of that once the contractors come in to actually remove it? Do they take ownership over or we still retain ownership over it? So like that, we can ensure and follow through with the donation and the reuse of it. I hope that's clearer.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Rennie. Yeah, very clear, Councillor Greco. The product is ours, and we will donate it. Yes, the product remains the council's.
Thank you, councillors. And I know that last time it was very well received, and there is, in fact, when we took up the fake turf at John Cain, there is playgrounds in kinders and schools all over Daravan that have actually got a bit of that covering dust baths and other areas, which has made them more usable. Councillor Williams, did you have a question?
Just obviously the same thing as what you're on your path that you were just saying, Mayor Rennie, was that it'd be nice to get a feedback where they do go to, because I think it was quite uplifting to know that they went to kindergartens and primary schools, and it was yeah, it's a nice little celebration, big tick for councillors knowing that it's been reused and recycled.
Take that as a comment, thank you. I think that might end the questions. So Councillor Newton?
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. So that will involve adding some names. Before I accept a seconder, Councillor Newton, can you confirm that those names that have appeared now in the motion are those which you wish to see there? And that amount?
I'll just check. Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Thank you. Is there a councillor who would like to second that motion? Councillor Williams, thank you. Councillor Newton, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. So I'm really pleased to be supporting awarding this contract. So this is something that I used to play hockey when I was a kid, so I know how important the turf in a hockey field is. And this is something where I've spent a lot of time speaking to the Latrobe Hockey Club players about their turf. They've been really, really after this for a number of years now. I think it's been one of the worst turfs, I guess, in the state. So I'm so pleased that tonight we can support the contract awarding for the works that we've got. We're also really, really fortunate to get a state government grant, which we can help with this as well. And I'm just really, really pleased for the hockey club and for everyone that will use this in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Councillor Williams.
Yes, very much looking forward to seeing the new hockey pitch. I know multiple of councillors, not only on this council, but previous councillors have actually been on site, obviously trying to advocate and get a new pitch over the years, but we haven't been fortunate enough. But the fact that we've received funding through government, that we are able to pitch in, because these pitches they're not cheap. They're very, very expensive. So I very much look forward to what works that occur there, especially that we're also got John Hall lighting coming also. So I think that whole area is going to have a huge revamp. I don't think the people in the area and the community is going to know that whole area. They're going to be so excited with so much going on. I'd also like to say a big thank you to our officers, because I know how long this has taken to obviously get to this point. And I obviously want to say thank you to the hockey club, because I know they've been extremely patient. I know we've had a lot worse, should I say, clubs that have been at our at our beck and call, knocking and phone calling us and demanding things, where this club has been quite patient. And I very much want to say thank you to all them too. So that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mayor Rennie. Just like to speak in favour of this motion. It's certainly been a very, very long journey. This hockey club, along with one in Ashwood, in Monash, were two of the worst clubs that I'm familiar with, and with family who played hockey. And it was many years ago where it was we were trying to get it upgraded, and it was gazumped by greater minds, greater powers. And then it was very close to being considered at another point just several years ago, and then a proposal across the road on Plenty Road offering large amounts of money pushed this down out of the priority list. So this is sort of the third time it's come up, and finally some investments there. It is a very expensive issue to provide synthetic pitch, but it is one that's sort of been several years, dozens of years in the making. So I'm very happy to support the motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Are there any further speakers? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll move straight to item 7.9, which is the contract award for the construction of the Daravan Multi-Sport Stadium. We've got Mr. Hewitt with us already. Are there any questions? There are no questions. I'll now invite a motion. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. If you could let us know what motion you're moving. So, Councillor McCarthy, can you confirm that you're moving the officer's recommendation, which has appeared on the screen?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lasser. Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. So this evening, we obviously have had a number of motions in relation to the multi-sport stadium. And in relation to this one, this is one of the most significant ones. We will have more, but this one in particular is the awarding of the tender for the construction of the multi-sport stadium. And alongside that, some of the intersection upgrades as part of this project. This is a complicated project. It is a significant project. It is a project that has been a long time coming. And if I reflect back on where we were with this as a concept or an idea back in 2014, when we heard from our community that there was a massive need to increase opportunities for women and girls in particular to play netball and basketball. This was the project that we envisaged, and we are now at that stage of actually awarding the construction tender. As councillors would be aware, this is a design and construct arrangement. So there are works that are going to be underway basically between now and November 2021. So there is a timeline here that obviously has some uncertainties around it in terms of the COVID environment, but we have done everything we can in relation to the tendering arrangements to deliver the certainty that our community needs in relation to this project. And I'd probably say as well that alongside the project itself, the outcomes that will come from it, the significance, and I'm sure Councillor Lasserf will pick up on some of these, but there are elements to this project that we wouldn't have been able to do a few years ago in relation to the ESD components. This is also a project that is going to deliver a significant amount of work for local people and of course for a range of disciplines, as councillors would be well aware. I just wanted to also highlight the fact that with this project and with any new facility, council has a commitment to inclusion, and in relation to this one in particular, we'll have obviously accessible and changing place facilities, which is absolutely fantastic to have this in a community facility, gender neutral toilets, and of course the team change rooms that we would love to have at so many of our other facilities. So ensuring that we actually have both safe and inclusive facilities that make clubs, whether they are the local netball team that has just gotten going and in fact has got a new team going, trying out for the first time, through to more professional groups as well. Everyone will feel welcome, and that's essential to this. There's also going to be elements of this facility that will be available for much bigger matches, and there's a show court hall which will enable other sorts of activities to occur that are both culturally sensitive and also other sorts of activities that are appropriate as well. I think the other thing I just wanted to highlight in the time I have left, Mayor, is that this is a project that is going to obviously transform the opportunity for not only women and girls, but I think entire communities to access indoor sports, not just through the peak periods, but throughout the year. And that's the wonderful thing about an indoor facility. I'm so impressed. I'd like to thank the officers and all the community members that fought for this.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Lasser.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie, and that was a comprehensive summary by Councillor McCarthy. It's really exciting to have to be at this point to award a contract for design and construction of the multi-sport stadium. We've been working on this since the start of our term, and I know it predates this council term, so it's really great to be realising this project and to be delivering, I guess, a new sports facility with the focus on giving women and girls the opportunity to have a game locally. I'm also really proud that we've been able to include, I guess, some really good sustainability considerations into the design of the stadium. It's been registered as a 5-star Green Star facility, and so there are an array of different sustainability measures that will be incorporated into the design and the operation of the building that are listed in the report. Most importantly, right now, this project will actually create 107 jobs during the construction phase. And while we would love them all to be people who live within Daravan, they will be obviously filled with undertaken by people right across Melbourne. And I know that, you know, not only Daravan is struggling, but there are a lot of areas that need this stimulus and need this job creation. So I'm really proud of that. We've been able to provide that opportunity through this project. And not only, I guess, to the actual on-site construction jobs, but there is the flow-on effect of further jobs in terms of the creation of the materials and the equipment that will actually be put into building the stadium. It's really good that we can, as we've said during the budget process, allocate a significant amount to capital works for that job creation. And lastly, I just wanted to point out that the contingency associated with this budget is actually significantly higher than normal. And that's because during the construction of the outdoor netball courts, we realise there's a significant amount of contaminated soil that needs to be remediated. And so we've allocated additional money just in case that occurs as we construct this facility. So thank you.
That's Tom. Thank you, Councillor Lasserf. Are there further speakers? Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mayor Rennie. It's very good to finally see this project happening. It was really a potential that almost emerged with Northcote High School and the Basketball Association to get an indoor stadium many years ago. And unfortunately, that didn't come into fruition. And if it had, we would have had a regional scaled 8 to 10 with show court as well. That opportunity was missed by previous councils, and then this project then emerged from a variation to the developer contribution, where we were able to get $6 million to be allocated to this project. And I believe we have been having $3 million of our own money floating in the system, rolling over for 6 years, really, until we've got this project. Councillors won't be surprised about my concern about a 22% contingency. I certainly have made it clear we should have more discipline in our capital works programs. I have not been satisfied with the answers about the contingency on this project in previous council motions, and I still remain deeply concerned about it. But in this COVID period, I really have to support it, even though I think we might be overspending here, because our entire capital works program has been reduced to very few items. So just for the sake of jobs,
That's
I'll
time,
be
thanks.
supporting this motion, but I will be obviously making my views on these other matters
That's time. Thank you, Councillor Lyons.
known elsewhere.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Messina.
Just wanted to add, and just a few things about that particular area. And I think the contingency was due to the contamination. Can I also add and congratulate the Council Sports Department, because we were successful. I think it'll be noted, and I see Councillor Lassurf nodding her head, that we were actually successful. We had a $2 million grant given for the MSD. So we need to mention that and say thank you to the officers who, and I think it would have taken not more than one submission to get that through. So I want to say thank you to the department through Kerry and all the work that have been undertaken by the team, and say yay to our successful submission from SV. So I think that needs to be noted.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I just want to say a big thank you not only to officers but councillors that have been involved in this, particularly Councillor McCarthy, who's been quite passionate, particularly with the, I think it's the Lakeside Netball Club, who have been growing quite at a very quick and rapid expansion, especially the very young girls. And it was very it was lovely to meet a lot of the young girls who were there when we actually went there for the promotion of the day. Also local ministers, Kat was there, and a few other people, which I think was trying to say it was very important occasion. But to see the fruition to come to life, I think it's great, and it will allow more girls, particularly, to be playing sport. It will be a place that would be offering the indoor, where a lot of netball has been outdoors. So this is a nice surprise for this end of Daravan, who don't have this particular type of facility, where the North does, which is unusual because we're always talking about the North is usually going without. But in particular, the South does not have this particular type of area where people can actually play indoors under the cover. So I very much look forward to seeing that being built, and obviously watching those parks continually to grow.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there further speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. I too fully support this project, and as it's been mentioned, it's a long time coming to have this project before us here tonight. As we know, this is a very much an intergenerational type project, which will significant expenditure, which will be of intergenerational benefit. And also, I think this project is important because it addresses the gender equity issue in terms of sport participation. And we've had many reports that have actually highlighted the gender inequality in relation to the use and access to our sporting facilities. But the point that I really also want to make is that given that it is an intergenerational project, I feel that from a financial perspective, we actually could have borrowed money for this particular project this year. And why that would have been suitable to borrow money is that because we don't have any loans. We will start borrowing in the following years, but we could have borrowed money this year, and it's a way of trying to also use this project to provide an economic stimulus. I think Councillor Surf mentioned how this particular project will be providing over 100 jobs, and so therefore, if we're able to borrow money for this particular project, we could have then used some of the money and the other money that would have been freed up in order to fund other facilities in our community. Unfortunately, we're not doing that. It was a council decision not to borrow in the last budget, and here really was an opportunity to borrow, so that we did not need, therefore, to cut our capital works budget by nearly $20 million, which could have provided perhaps up to more than those 100 jobs this financial year. Thank you.
That's time. Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any further speakers? There being none, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We're now at 7.10, the recycling contract tender. Mr. Hewitt's with us again in case anyone has questions. Councillor Messina.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Rennie. I just want to highlight and ask questions about the recycling contract. I just want to understand that for the community and everyone that's listening, does this extension of contract include our curbside recycling in terms of our fortnightly bins? Does it include the hard waste collection? And does it include the resource recovery centre?
Mr. Hewitt.
Through you, Mayor Rennie. I've got Mr. Watson and Mr. Grambo with me as well in case they need to speak, but this is the curbside recycle collection contract. It's a new contract for the council to enter into if it chooses. So this is the curbside collection. It doesn't include hard waste. That's under review as per the council's resolution of a couple of weeks ago. And the Daravan Resource Recovery Centre, that contract expires this time next year. There's some options for council to consider there. So it doesn't include that either.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Are there other questions, councillors? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. Fairly delicate question. I'm not sure whether it'll be able to be answered, but because of the confidentiality part of this this item. But I think one of the questions I think we need to publicly answer to the community, and is that if we are going to enter into a new contract, a new 7-year contract, is the reliability of the contractor in relation to providing for the life of the contract in regards to recycling, because of the previous experience that we've had in this sector, and particular moments where we were not able to fulfill our recycling obligations. So I was just wondering whether Mr. Yu will be able to shed some light in this public space around that particular question.
Through you, Mayor Rennie, I might throw to my colleague, Mr. Grambo, who sat on the tender evaluation panel. He might be able to share some insights into the preferred and recommended tenderer.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Through you, Mayor Rennie. The contract clearly outlined what the industry changes have been under in recent years. We're lucky enough that this is for the collection of and not the recyclable facility where the issue has been previously within it. The preferred contractor is a large multinational company who has several contracts of the size or larger within the local government sector.
Thank you. Councillors, I'm keen to get to debate because we don't have a lot of time left in our meeting. Is there a motion? Councillor Messina. Councillor Messina, you're on mute, so if you just unmute yourself. So
apologies. It's quite late, and I'm obviously not quick off the mark given my age.
That's okay, Councillor Messina. Don't start debating. You've moved. You've
item number. Oh, okay. I was going to give you the amounts, but you've already done that. Thank you.
Are they? Can you just confirm that that's what you expected?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Terrific. And is there a seconder for that, Councillor Lawrence? Councillors, let's see if we can keep the debate very brief because of the hour. Councillor Messina.
I guess I want to point out that this is for the collection of the curbside waste, and I look forward to consumer development, consumer behavioural change, where perhaps we will discuss how that's going to be our term in the long term, in council's long-term position on how we reduce that, how we reduce those costs associated with curbside delivery, and how we deliver that message. And I know the community want to come along on that journey with us, and the advocacy work that we've been doing with the Metro Waste Forum and all other forums in relation to waste. will look at those arenas. And I'd like to see that multi-unit developments, when it comes to the collection, because we have no control of the collections or what actually happens to that waste in multi-unit development, and the evolution of that and our advocacy on that position. So the long-term goal would be to reduce the costs associated with council in the terms of recyclable or any waste services, and also reducing the landfill component of where that occurs. And I look forward to the evolution of this council and next term, that the councillors also carry on that passion and the advocacy that we've undertaken with waste and our stance on waste, not only through social lens, economical lens, but also the environmental lens. And I know the community want to come along that journey, and I recognise the community in the forums that have been advocating for that, and I look forward to that evolution. And thank the officers for their report.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mayor Rennie, happy to support this motion and this contract, because this is one of the most important things local government does in the space around recycling. And it is a space that's being challenged and changing for the better in some ways, in that we have new legislation coming around recycling from the state level. But we're also looking at an issue of community trust due to what's occurred in the whole recycling space in the last few years, where offsetting goods, offsetting material overseas has turned out to be a false avenue. So the pathway forward requires good players involved in this space, but it also requires innovation. So while this is a 7-year contract, hopefully the next council will also, and our suppliers that we're going to partnerships with, will also have a mind for looking for innovations that will increase and lessen our impact in terms of landfill.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillors, is there any speaker against? There's no speaker against. I'll propose to put that straight to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to consideration of responses to petitions, notices of motion and general business. There are none. So we'll then go to 9.1. Councillor Messina, did you want to...
Mayor Rennie,
extend the time?
Mayor Rennie, if I may seek clarification, I think Councillor Lawrence had a petition, and also because I blacked out, like you did, Mayor Rennie, I didn't get an opportunity also to raise a petition that I would like to.
I've dealt with the petition issue. We're coming back to petitions after urgent business, so
Okay.
We'll get there, and let's move fairly promptly through number 9, which is notices of motion. The first one being by Councillor McCarthy. So, Councillor McCarthy, I'm not sure if there's been any amendments or if you've got an alternative, just because I know there were some. So,
thanks, Mayor. Yes, there is an alternative, an amendment which was sent through. Which officers? I'll just check if officers have that.
So we'll just make sure, Councillor McCarthy, I'll get you to read what's on the screen and ensure that that is. So you've incorporated Councillor Greco's amendments, I think. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. I'm just checking the wording, but the final point shouldn't have the words "that council" at the start of the sentence. It should just be receives
a report. Okay.
Yep.
So thank you for working with Councillor Greco to incorporate those. Councillor Greco, would you like to second that, given that Councillor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor Rennie.
Thank you. So, Councillor Lawrence. Sorry, you're on mute, Councillor Lawrence.
I just had 2 amendments. I'm not sure if they've been incorporated or not.
I'm not sure either, but we've got the mover and seconder at this point, and I would ask both of you, I know this is a topic very dear to our hearts and we're doing a lot of work in this space, but if you could speak briefly, that would be great. So, Councillor McCarthy, over to you.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm really pleased to incorporate Councillor Greco's amendments, and also pleased to see the significant community support for this motion and for this proposed move by council. As we're all aware, at Bell City Mantra, which is obviously a significant facility within the city of Daravan, we became aware in December, I believe it was last year, that the facility was being used as a place to house, or in fact detain, refugee men, in around 60 who had been moved from Mantra as part of following the Medivac legislation. As a council that prides itself on its commitment to both human rights and also social justice and equality, we've had a strong position for a long time in favour of a fairer deal and better arrangements for refugees, regardless of where they are in Australia. So it's obviously a significant issue for us in our own community, in a facility like this, which council has had a long association with, to have men being housed and being treated, in fact, under conditions that really, I believe, are morally unacceptable in our very own community. And it's shocked members of the community that this has been occurring. It's probably also shocked members of our community that this is possible under, well, apparently is possible under the current planning arrangements. And so hence I welcomed Councillor Greco's question there about looking at the planning component. But what I'm really seeking to do here with this motion, councillors, is to send a very clear message to Mantra and the owners of Bell City that if they wish to operate in this community and they wish to be a good neighbour, then they need to align with the values of our community, which is that we do not tolerate the cruel detention practices that are being undertaken here. Council has reached out on a number of occasions, and I'd commend our CEO, Mayor, and also officers for their efforts in this regard behind the scenes to make offers to the federal government to give a better deal for these men while they're in our community, including the use of our facilities, the ability to move freely and connect with a whole range of health, medical and welfare services, and obviously education and employment opportunities. Those opportunities have all been rejected by the federal government. And so now it's time for us to turn our attention to the point of influence that we have, which is to say to Mantra, you need to use your voice. Yes, you may have a contract in place here, but you need to use your voice. If you are going to be part of our community, you need to use your voice to the federal government and say that you are not comfortable with the arrangements that you have, that you will not continue to operate these arrangements, and that you actually will back this campaign. Until then, council should not be doing any business and should be asking our partners to not do any business with Mantra, with Bell City, in fact, and also asking other councils to join us around the country for any other hotels that are engaged in the same practices. So the call out here is also to our local MPs, our neighbouring councils, to join us in this campaign to boycott Bell City until they join our campaign and ask for a fairer deal for these very vulnerable people.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. First of all, I thank Councillor McCarthy for putting forward this motion and for incorporating the 3 points that I've put into the motion. I'll just concentrate on the points that I've put into the motion, which actually not only try to reach out to and appeal to Mantra, but has also tried to put into place a compliance framework to see whether we can actually put some pressure, real pressure on Mantra to address some of the concerns. The concerns are, first of all, is that from sources that I've been able to get information of, and they are people that are very active in this space, and also from the refugees themselves that have been basically imprisoned in Mantra, have provided me with enough information that I am confident to move these 3 points. So the first point that is in relation to isolation cells. At the moment, Mantra is apparently dedicated its first floor to use them as isolation cells, actually transferring people from other detention centres into those isolation cells. But apparently, according to the sources, and very reliable sources, both inside and outside of Mantra, that those isolation cells have not been approved by the chief medical officer. Also, the third point that I put there, which is something that is within our realm, I think as a council we need to thoroughly look at the planning permit conditions that we've applied to Mantra, and we need to clearly investigate whether we have any levers, because the Mantra Hotel, from a hotel, it's metamorphosed itself into basically a prison. If there was an applicant applying to have a prison, I'm sure that we would have different controls in relation to a prison. So we need to actually drill down into that space and get a report back so that we can take some concerted action against it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Greco. Can I just get a continuance on time before we go any further? That's moved by Councillor McCarthy, seconded by Councillor Lawrence. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Thank you, Councillors McCarthy and Greco. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Messina.
I know it's very late and we should move for an extension of time. Should we do that before I speak?
We've just done that. We've just done that.
Sorry. It's late and I'm tired. I needed to say something, and I know the time. It's 2020 and we're asking human beings to live like caged pigeons, caged chickens, caged animals. This shouldn't be happening today. This is happening in our backyard. And I want to say thank you to Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Greco. This highlights what's happening there. We need to do more. More needs to be. They're human beings living in our backyard and nobody's listening. And we need to help them and advocate for them. I don't expect anybody to be living in those conditions, not in Australia, not anywhere else in the world for that matter. But it's happening in our backyard and we should say no. And the Mantra is an international hotel. It's not some mum and dad down the road that's owning a little motel down the road. They're an international company. They need to listen to our voice and they need to take action, because you know what? It's not about money. It's about human lives. And I just want to say thank you again to Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Greco. And this notice, this urgent notice of motion is to take charge and take point. And this is happening in Daravan and it shouldn't be happening. I'm sorry, I'm late and I'm tired and I'm very, very angry.
Thanks, Councillor Messina. Are there further speakers? Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Maretti. Just to say that I really support Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Greco for putting this forward. I think this year we've all had a taste of what it feels like to be isolated or what it feels like to be locked down. And for me, I get out once a day at least and go for a jog. And if I couldn't do that, I don't know how my mental health would be. And I think the fact that these men have been in that sort of situation where they don't have access to open space for months and months on end, I think is awful. And I think it's very important for us as a council to make the stance that we don't accept that in our city. And like Councillor Messina is saying, we don't accept it anywhere. So I really hope that this has some impact, and I hope that Mantra City is feeling the pressure here, and I hope they continue to feel the pressure. And so the same with the federal government. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Councillor Williams.
I just want to say that I really feel for these men. I think it's what must be close to a year that they've been locked up on one level, where they're not integrating with the rest of the community. There's a men only. They have other family members who love them, who are probably so worried about them. But on top of that, even if they, after all this, I can't even fathom the mental health that it must have on these men. The mental health and the breakdown and the isolation that they have, not only from family, loved ones, and the community, it must, I just can't even fathom. I can't fathom it. I really feel for them, and I'm sure that there's a lot of other people in the community that are really feeling what they are going through. We're only just getting a small taste of what it's like to be in isolation at home, and yet we still have the privilege that we have 4 reasons that we can still leave our home. They don't have 1, 0, fat 0. And I think it's really important that we continue to fight this and help them, because they don't have a voice in there. We need to be their voice. We need to stay together, stick together, and we need to continue this fight. This wouldn't be the only place that's doing this with refugees, but I think that we need to empower the people in Daravan and particularly us councillors, because we represent the city of Daravan and we need to continue to say that we will be their voice. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mayor Rennie, I'd like to acknowledge fellow councillors Greco and Councillor McCarthy bring forward this motion. But I'd also like to acknowledge yourself, Mayor Rennie, and Councillor Greco, I understand, have been engaged with the refugee activists and refugees for some months while this situation has continued to really spiral out of control into a very repulsive example of federal government powers being misused. And I think around this council, we reflect the local community who reject the federal government's approach to refugees, in particular indefinite detentions, that lead to these ridiculous circumstances where Australia, which should be a leader in human rights, is putting people through torture. And I would just mention Priya, the Tamil family that were detained briefly in the northern suburbs and have been for months and months and months stuck in Christmas Island because of health reasons. The mother of that family, Priya, has been brought back to the mainland. How inhumane is our federal government? And I'd also like to acknowledge, I understand Councillor Greco and Councillor Rennie got involved early on when Jed Carney was raising this issue and alerted us all via social media of this terrible misuse of a hotel. And, you know, because of the virus, I think maybe it hasn't got the attention it should, but really any kind of consumer boycotts that we can activate as a council.
That's time. Thank you, Councillor Lawrence.
We should take up.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously, and we send our messages of support to the refugees and asylum seekers held inhumanely in Mantra. Thank you. That brings us to item 9.2 on the agenda, securing the future of Clements Reserve. Councillor Greco, Councillor McCarthy, I'll take that as moved by you. We'll just get it up on the screen.
There's just a couple of words which have been circulated to officers and councillors earlier this evening. You may not have seen them because you've been online. It's simply, I think officers hopefully should have those.
Thank you. We'll get that up on the screen. I'm not sure what's happened to our screen sharing.
And just to be clear for councillors, if I may, Mayor, just so councillors understand what the words are, they were simply to add.
That would be good, thank you.
After the word report in the first point is to add the words at a council meeting in September.
Thank you. On the basis that that's very simple and that councillors will have all the paperwork, is there a seconder for Councillor McCarthy's motion? Seconded by Councillor Greco. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'll keep this brief. The hour is late. As councillors would be aware, we have parcels of land which are of significance to the community. They're significant for a whole range of reasons. They have come before council in the past for consideration, both in relation to rezoning and in relation to potential purchase. And whilst I have a different view to the way that council dealt with it in the previous occasion back in 2015 in terms of one of these parcels, I maintain the view that these parcels must be protected, and it is absolutely essential that council does everything it can to protect the future of Clements Reserve. And I think it's worth naming the fact that there are in fact 3 parcels of land here which are under control by the state government. There has been talk of potential development at the site and rezoning options. And I think if we reflect on how rare it is for us to to be able to actually secure the future of land. There are a few occasions in my last 12 years when council has been able to move in this way. So this is really to get the official process underway for us to get the report back, which by September, as outlined in the motion, to ensure that we are clear on what has happened up until now. And that was evidenced in your own response this evening, Mayor, to the question that came to us. But also to ensure that we're doing everything we can to secure the future of Clements Reserve for the local community. There is a lot of interest here in what will happen. And obviously council has the open space levy, which is one mechanism through which to purchase land. There are other mechanisms as well. I hope that the state government also sees the good sense that this is land that is best placed to be in local community hands and best placed to be kept as green open space. I think there's probably enough, Mayor. I'll end it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Greco.
Sorry, Mayor. Look, I reserve my right to speak, Mayor.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mayor, I had 2 amendments sent through earlier today.
Councillor Lawrence, have you seen the advice that was provided to you in relation to those amendments? The first related to Strathallan. That is not able to be considered as part of the NOM tonight, and the advice on that is quite clear, because were it part of the NOM, then the NOM would not be accepted because that has been debated in the last 6 months. And the other item related to poisoning, have you seen the advice from the officers related to poisoning?
No, I had this problem with the computers.
Councillor Lawrence, can you try and read your emails and look at those while we have the debate? Because
I only have a private phone. I don't have a council phone. I'm still waiting for that for 5 days.
Well, I'm not sure whether you're able to read your emails on the same computer you're working on.
I don't want to upset the screen. I'm not get back in.
Okay, I'm going to essentially, there was very clear advice on both matters. The first is that the First Amendment cannot be accepted. And the second was that council officers have already investigated the case of the tree and are certain there was no poisoning. That's in your email. So just ponder that for a second while I go to
I'll speak to the motion.
You'll speak to the motion then? Okay. Councillor Lawrence, over to you to speak to the motion.
Yes, look, Mayor Rennie, I was really disappointed when councillors voted against any action on this last week. I'm glad now we're changing. I'm, been on council for a while, so I'm used to people trying to block things. With Ruthven Primary School, there was a lot of councillors trying to block the purchase of it until I advertised to the community that there was actually an open space levy reserved to buy it. So this is sort of a bit back to the future where this parcel of land and Strathallan, which is 15 hectares of bushland, are continually being ignored and not brought forward for open space reserve treatment. I'm grateful for this to occur. It's a pity that my pleas for 3 months have fallen on deaf ears regarding one of the most mature Indigenous trees in this very parcel, because it was suffering from a lack of investment because of the lopsided investment along Daravan Creek, and that killed that lack of attention killed that tree. Now, it's something that has happened along that area quite a bit. There's a lot of mature trees that have simply been cut down, and we don't have the mature plantings to address this. Clements Reserve is in my daily walk, and so I've documented everything, which I think I do need to submit to environment groups to understand why we need to invest not just purchasing this land, but actually developing the canopy covers, and even things like toilets are blocked just across the road. The only public toilets is actually locked. The women's toilet is locked, cannot be accessed. So again, the neglect around this area is quite great, but I'm really disappointed that this council...
Councillor Lawrence, that's time. Thank you.
...can't act on Strathallan 15 hectares of bushland.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Greco, you reserved your right. Do you wish to speak now?
Yeah, just very quickly, I just want to say that we could have dealt with this last week. Unfortunately, we didn't. Also, I'd like to say that it's a shame that we have to buy this land from the state government, and it actually should be actually given to us. But that argument has been had, and we have to move on. Fortunately, we have we can secure it. We have an open space reserve that enables us to acquire parcels of land. And this motion goes in that direction. So I'm happy to second it and support it.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Messina?
I did have my hand up before, so I don't know if you saw that, Mayor Rennie. Just briefly, I just wanted to acknowledge that there was a notice of motion that came to this council several years ago, and we understood that action had been undertaken. So there has to be something that looked at into the processes of when notice of motions are put into chamber and when actions are not being completed. So that's a separate issue. Secondly is I want to address the budget implication of last week's on Wednesday evening about Clemens Return and McMahon. We did say that there was a notice of motion and we were attending to it. So the open space levy was clear from the councillors that spoke and debated it that we wanted the open space levy to purchase or look at the feasibility of purchasing those lands. The lands on these 3 parcels. So I think I need to make that clear. It wasn't that we were rejecting what a councillor had stated. It was that we were going to be addressing it this evening and we had called for a report so it can be looked at for the future acquisition, the possibility of the future acquisition of these parcels of land.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Are there any further speakers? There are none. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now go to item 9.3, report into interwork activities. Councillor Greco, I'll take that as moved by you. Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Lawrence, thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Greco, over to you.
Just very quickly, the motion is fairly self-explanatory. We haven't seen a report come to council in relation to Interwork. Interwork, as councillors know, it's a council subsidiary, which is and on its board has both councillors from Moreland, Yarra and Daravan. It's a company that deals with apprenticeships and traineeships, and what the motion there suggests is that we should receive a briefing from our officers. I understand that some of our officers sit on that board, and they would be good to get an understanding of where the company is at. It's a not-for-profit company. Particularly why I'm putting this motion now is that given the COVID-19 crisis, youth unemployment is skyrocketing, and given that Interwork, it was actually originally set up to deal with apprenticeships and traineeships with youth in the northern area, that it'll be good to get a report to see what work or activity Interwork are doing in relation to trying to support and maintain as much as they can youth apprenticeships and youth traineeships in light of the COVID crisis. Many not-for-profit companies have been affected, obviously, particularly apprenticeships and traineeships, and it'll be good to get a report to see what we could feed back to the not-for-profit company Interwork in terms of helping to promote opportunities for young people in terms of apprenticeships and traineeships, particularly in the northern area of our city. So I look for, hopefully if this motion gets through, the report coming back to us so that we can provide some valuable feedback to our own subsidiary company. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mayor Rennie. Look, this organisation is one of the was one of the success stories coming out of the inner north councils, and has since, developed and actually extended their product to other regions, other places, and it's one of those good news stories around social enterprises that the 3 inner city councils, Moreland, Yarra and Daravan, have been involved in. It also has a spin-off in terms of an Inner North Foundation, where the profits from this, some of the profits from this enterprise given back to the Inner North community via that mechanism. So hopefully a report in the future would sort of update us on where that is. The importance of group training enterprises and structures is really important, especially in a period like now when subcontractors and companies are going belly up, because those kind of mechanisms can ensure that those apprentices get new placements and continue to finish and complete their training. So aside from the money involved in this social enterprise, which spins off for the community, there's a great community benefit for investing in organised group training, which I'm sure there's other councillors more qualified to speak tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Are there any speakers against? Then I'm going to put that straight to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to consideration, urgent business. There is one urgent business item that's been put up. So firstly, I need a motion that be accepted. Is someone happy to, Councillor Messina, you're moving a motion that it be accepted onto the agenda, seconded by Councillor Newton. All those in favour? That has been accepted onto the agenda. So Councillor McCarthy, it's your motion. I'll take that as moved by you and seconded by Councillor Messina.
Can I just check that the wording is correct?
Sure. I'm going to thank Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Messina for working together to incorporate some suggestions from Councillor Messina. It's very helpful when they can be incorporated rather than having to deal with them as amendments. So Councillor McCarthy, can you confirm that's as you expect?
That looks correct.
Councillor Lassurf is indicating that that possibly doesn't look correct. So Councillor Lassurf.
There's a point D, there's in Councillor Messina's amendment, it goes down to G in the second dot point. Oh, that just changed, didn't it?
Okay, we'll take it as
crazy. That just changed.
Yes, it did.
Okay, Councillor McCarthy.
Sorry, Mayor, can I just see what's the difference between what was just on screen and
There's a point D and E, which were Councillor Messina's changes.
Correct.
And there's also an addition of point 7, which I think was Councillor Greco's amendment.
Yes, if we can scroll back down again. Sorry, Mayor. Just
No, that's good. It's important that we are very clear on what we are debating.
And that includes point 7 as well.
And that does include point 7. So thank you equally, Councillor Greco, I think, for doing that. So, councillors, if you could keep your debate very brief, that would be terrific.
Sorry, Mayor, that's correct. Just to be clear, point 7 sits there, leads in from that council. Now, I would just check that officers have checked on the wording of that's correct, because I don't think we've had an officer advice on that, if we could.
I don't think it's correct. It doesn't pick up my my inclusion, and I can't scroll up and down to see where it has been picked up.
Okay, Councillor Greco, Councillor McCarthy, you'd worked with Councillor Greco and Councillor Messina, and we're happy, I think, to incorporate some additions. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm just checking that point 7 as listed is correct. So,
Mayor Reddy, my inclusion hasn't been picked up in relation to getting more testing in the city of Daravan, like a mobile testing arrangement, and something that I raised right at the outset of the meeting.
You did. What I'm going to suggest is that we'll look through that. We're going to hear from the mover and the seconder so we can keep things moving. Whilst we're hearing from the mover and the seconder, we'll see if we can...
Sorry, can I just jump in? There was an email sent by Councillor Greco at 5:14 with the words of his amendment, if that helps.
Yes, there was.
Yes. Look, if you want to
So
continue
it's
on,
number 9. I can read it. Well, I was quite keen to continue with the mover and the seconder because I think we can get it incorporated. So can we start the
Sure.
start the clock, and Councillor McCarthy, if you could make it brief, that would be great. Thank you.
Just very quickly, obviously we're very concerned about the impact of the lockdown arrangements, the hard lockdown that was experienced in North Melbourne and Flemington recently. We have our own public housing tower being at Home Street in Northcote, which is, and I've visited there on a number of occasions, although not in recent months, obviously. But it's a place where we have a lot of highly vulnerable people, a lot of older people who are housed there, who are highly isolated and do not necessarily have the ability to leave their units and get COVID tested. They are at risk, I think, and certainly at risk in relation to any practices that are not up to scratch. And obviously we need to be doing everything we can for all residents, but in particular those that are most vulnerable in these circumstances. So the appeal here is really to the state government to do everything it can to work closely with council, our officers and other services to support those residents at Home Street, but also to make sure that we do not see a repeat of what can be considered very harsh measures without any notice on people that are already, in many cases, doing it pretty tough. And so there's a real effort here in this motion to ask DHHS to work with council to put both the human rights and the experiences of those people at the forefront, and to also be proactive in providing preventative options for people as well. So I'll end it there. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and I hope councillors can support it.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Messina.
I just want to say thank you, Councillor McCarthy, working with me to add in those amendments. It's very clear that what happened in North Melbourne and Flemington was that the communication strategy was not detailed, and that the residents there had not had the appropriate PPE equipment. And history, based on what had happened in overseas, is an indication of what we needed to facilitate to stop that spread. And it's clear to me that that didn't occur. And that's what this urgent motion does. It basically reflects the policies, the procedures, the PPE equipment that are required in the future, what's required now, what communication strategy needs to be undertaken to ensure that the message to the residents there, our most vulnerable in the community, are addressed. And this is what this self-explanatory urgent notice of motion does. It goes through the policies and procedures, the planning, the communication strategies to ensure that there are proactive measures to ensure that they're safe. And I just want to say thank you again to Councillor McCarthy, who's undertaken this urgent action that our community needs to know that we're there to look after them, and that's what this does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Mayor Rennie, yes, I'm just having some trouble reading that because of my lack of email contact. But I just wanted to ask a question. Does that motion cover Mary Outreach Support Service?
It's in relation to public housing stock, I think, more than it is in relation to services, Councillor Lawrence. But I equally think it gives us the ability. So we're not taking more questions now. Councillor Lasserve.
I'm just worried that in 3 minutes' time we will need to actually finish the meeting. So can I suggest that we move to Councillor Greco's amendment and then we put the motion, and then we'll have to adjourn the meeting?
Thank you, Councillor Lasserve. We're not quite as tight as that because of the breaks that have been taken in the meeting, so I am keeping an eye on the clock, but I think that's a very good suggestion. Councillor Greco, you can see that those words request the state government increase the number of COVID testing stations. Councillor
I've moved those as an amendment to be included into the motion.
Sure. Councillor McCarthy, is that acceptable to you, and is it acceptable to Councillor Messina?
Acceptable, assuming that we'll fix up the language so that it just reads that.
Yep. Let's not wordsmith. So, Councillor Greco, that's been accepted into the motion.
Well, I'd like to speak in relation to it then.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll just focus on, and I thank Councillor McCarthy and thank him for his grammar correction when it comes through. What the motion basically says is that late this afternoon, I've got to thank Ms. Croak, who's still, I believe, still online, is that we don't seem to have enough testing facilities in the city of Daravan. I know that there's one, but there's difficulty given that we've got a community which is quite a number of people who are aged and a number of people who suffer different disability to get across to the testing facility. And what this additional amendment does into the substantive motion is to ask the state government to provide more testing stations or to introduce a mobile testing units that can move across the city, particularly in the reservoir area, which is one of the hotspots, which has been identified by the state government itself. And so like that, we could actually undertake more testing. I think the community want to see that, and that'll provide a greater assurance to the community and will ensure that we'll be able to properly combat this COVID-19 health crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillors, I propose, given there were no speakers, Councillor Lawrence?
Yes, I'm just seeking an amendment that we include a dot point about council working with agencies at the grass level to assist Home Street as well, such as MOS.
Council's doing that, Councillor Lawrence, already, and I can assure you that I can follow that up as the Mayor. That I don't have that amendment in writing, so I'm not going to accept it at this late hour because I think it needs a bit of wordsmithing, but I can assure you that Council is working with those agencies. Yes?
I'd like to speak to the motion.
Sure.
Yes, look, I think this is a credit to the councillors who have got together to draft this substantial motion. I would acknowledge the assistance that outreach services have already provided in terms of material aid into the Home Street Tower. And, you know, I think that we should be trying to work as much as we can with grassroots organisations to fill in any gaps that occur. And certainly what's occurred in the high-rise towers in Kensington and Flemington could have happened and may happen in the current tower that we have, which is still the largest, highest building in Daravan, by the way. And that, so all these measures are very good because the system of public housing is not responded to this crisis in the correct way in some points, and it's something that has been a learning curve, but we don't want it to be a learning curve anymore.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillors, we'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we've got to 2 minutes past 11. We have a slight amount of leeway because we had breaks amounting to just over 10 minutes in the meeting. We are not going to get through the rest of the business item.
I disagree with that interpretation.
Yeah,
having that time.
And Mayor Rennie, could I just raise a point under the governance rules 18.7? You're given a leeway of 15 minutes to transaction any outstanding meetings. So I think we should make use of that extra 15 minutes so that we can actually finish this meeting and complete all matters.
Councillor Greco, I'm quite willing to use that clause and to proceed in that way. I know it is a very late night. We'll move straight then to petitions. I'd ask that you not read them out and not debate them, but you just get them tabled, which is what you want to do. So Councillor Lawrence, turn yourself off mute. If councillors could prepare, really, I shouldn't be still telling people 5 hours later to turn themselves off mute. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mayor Rennie, I have a petition of 360 people requesting council take immediate action to acquire 15 hectares at Strathallan. That adds to the already 250 that have gone in previously. I also have a petition from 48 people to take action on 2 shared bridges on Daravan Creek. I also have a petition from 19 people requesting an Auditor General investigation into Northcote Pool and a investigation in constructing 50-metre pool. So I have 19. That adds to the 167 that was tabled previously, and that's my petitions.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence, and you're seeking that those be tabled and referred to the CEO. Can I get a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Lassurf. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. They have been tabled and referred to the CEO. Councillor Greco. Take yourself off mute, Councillor Greco.
I'll start again. Thank you, Mayor Rennie. I have a petition. I have a petition that relates to the rate rise and residents objecting against the rate rise. I have 180 hard copy petitions, and I also have 192 online petitions. I'm calling for a report on the subject matter of the petition to come to council. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Lassurf.
Yes.
Were you, sorry, seconding? Or?
I was helping to second. But
great. Okay. Sorry. Thought. Okay. We'll vote on that. All those in favour. Thank you. Against. Okay, that's fine. That's carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Williams.
I also have 2 petitions.
Councillor Williams, I've allowed petitions from Councillor Lawrence and Greco because they had some tech problems. I'm going to allow them from you, but I really think it's stretching it. There's absolutely no reason you couldn't have tabled your petitions at the time. So go for it.
Okay, my petition is to save the reservoir pool. That's to add another 40 that was petitioned a couple of weeks ago. And the 2 petitions that I have, there's 200 signed signatures online to stop the rate rise, and I have 28 physical petitions to stop the council 2% rate rise.
Thank you. And you're suggesting they be tabled and referred to the CEO.
You also call for a report on the subject matter of the petition too.
You've got multiple petitions. Is that?
No, those 2.
Okay, the rate rise and the pool.
Correct.
That's seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? And against? That motion is carried. Thank you. Councillors, that brings us to the end of the petitions. Reports of standing committees. Moved by Councillor McCarthy, seconded by Councillor Greco. All those in favour? Sorry,
there was no reports of standing committees.
Thank you, Councillor Lassurf. I'm glad someone's still awake. I think we were actually on records of assemblies of councillors. Scrap the last one. Moved by Councillor McCarthy, seconded by Councillor Greco. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Lassurf. That brings us to the next one, which is reports by councillors. All those in, I'll have a mover. Moved by Councillor Lassurf, seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? That motion is carried. That now brings us to the point in the agenda where